Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Behind the Business. My name's Amanda. I am a co-founder and partner at the Mortgage Boutique. I'm originally from London and I have been in the UAE for just coming up to 11 years now.
Hi everyone, my name is Carina Harvey and I'm an identity guide and advisor. I've also been in the UAE for, just over 10 years and originally from the UK. So just as a reminder to you all in terms of what Behind the Business is and why we set it up, really it was born out of very natural conversations that Amanda and I were having about being entrepreneurs, having come out of corporate, learning as we go. So we thought, why not just share some of the experiences that we've had, real entrepreneurs who've lived, grown through the experiences and sharing what we've learned.
So following on from last week's discussion, we talked about owning the summer months, and that was part one. That was predominantly around being here still in the UAE during those quieter months, how that looked for people. We want to flip it this time, and we want to look at the perspective of people that are traveling and working at the same time, how that looks for them, how they manage that, you know, what they put in place to have that working holiday. So I personally did actually travel this summer. I know you didn't, Carina, but you have done previously. So when you've traveled previously, what's been maybe the first thing that comes to mind that you think, yeah, actually, I need to implement that to make this work for me?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is really thinking about setting in place your time management and your boundaries. So I think we have a tendency as entrepreneurs to always want to be switched on, and we do that no matter where we are. So it's exactly the same as if you're at home, right? And you learn this through experience. Usually it's your first year or two where you're constantly on for your clients, for your suppliers, whoever it may be. And then you learn that it's just physically not possible. So you start to put in place your boundaries, and it's exactly the same when you take a holiday as well. So depending on the type of trip that you have, you know, maybe you are going away and it's a proper holiday and you need that downtime, then, you know, you might want to be really strict with yourself and say you're just going to log on, you're going to deal with anything urgent for an hour in the morning. Or perhaps you're going away and you're an expat and you're going back home. So you know that you can chunk out more time. Maybe you're going to have 3 hours a day, but whatever it may be, whatever works for you, it's about carving out that time management aspect, carving out that schedule, and then setting in place your boundaries as well.
I think that's a great one. That's the first thing I did before I left for the UK this summer, is that I'd said to myself which days I was working, which days I was off, and I made sure that I carved out that time and I factored in how each day was going to look. So I had those boundaries of when I wasn't working, I wasn't working. And that looks different for everybody, because I think, so for yourself, you are a solopreneur. For me, I have a business partner. So for example, when I went and did Kilimanjaro last summer, the phone was on airplane mode for 8 days, which was absolute bliss. And I could do that because I was able to hand over all of my active clients to my fabulous business partner, Arnab. Huge shout out to him. And I knew that they were taken care of. So nobody needed to get hold of me. And it was a full switch off. But when I go back to the UK in the summer months, I don't need to do that, because for me, I took every Friday and Monday off. And I said, right, I'm going to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. My days also looked different, because one of the other things that comes into play is the time zones. So, you know, again, depending where you are in the world, UK, UAE is actually, it's manageable. It's definitely manageable. But obviously the UAE is kicking off earlier than us. So for me, it's just a case of starting the day earlier, and then it's more intense, but then you're wrapping up mid-afternoon, so you can manage the time, and just really factoring in as well the people that you're communicating with, where they are in the world, because everybody is traveling at some point over the summer generally. So if they're in the UK and I'm in the UK, then I'd factor them in later to my day. If they're in the UAE and I'm in the UK, I'd be speaking to them earlier on in the day, because otherwise I know I'm going to miss them. So I think that the time zones is a huge thing as well, and just being strict with, these are my working hours, these are my off hours.
Yeah, I think the time zone thing, I mean, I can trick myself into believing things aren't quite as complex as they are. So when I was in corporate, I used to work in global roles. So I would be dealing with all time zones at all points in time. But obviously, I would be on the ground in my home country. So naturally, it was just a routine and a schedule that I started to move through. I think the difference is when you're traveling, all of a sudden you're in a different time zone yourself. And something that you plan. So, for example, I'm sat in Dubai, and if next week I had to be in the US, it might sound in principle quite plausible to set up a call for a certain time. But actually, what are going to be my other priorities whilst I'm on the ground? What's my schedule going to look like there? Suddenly you're dealing with that, plus your own perception of that in this country right now, plus somebody else's agenda as well, and they might be sat in, Europe or wherever it may be. And I've actually had examples of that as well, where I've set up calls, two similar examples played out in very different styles. I remember once I had a call and I agreed to have a call. It was about half an hour after I was due to land, and my goodness, I was in such a rush, going through the baggage and all that kind of. I was like, quick, give me my bags. And I wanted to settle somewhere. And it was horrendous because I got to the call and it was fine. And obviously I was explaining, I've just come through the airport. But in my mind, I wasn't as prepared as I would want to be. My mindset wasn't as calm as I would have liked it for it to have been. My nervous system was in the state that it would be as you've just got off a flight and you're rushing. And then I had the same kind of scenario actually, and I rescheduled the call. So I actually organised, we were going to have the call, it was going to be at a certain time. And then I said, no, actually, I've been through the situation before. And we only moved it by about an hour, but it just made all of the difference to have that extra hour to just get off the flight calmly, settle, and, grab a coffee somewhere and just sensibly have that conversation.
Well, yeah, you didn't also leave any room for error in case your flight was delayed, did you?
Well, exactly, yeah.
That wouldn't have played out very well, would it?
Well, yeah, but you've got the internet on flights now.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I'm not sure how well that would work out, but yeah, it's I generally don't plan anything for travel days. I personally, I know people do calls from lounges, and on the go. I don't like it. Also, for me, in my line of work, I'm discussing, confidential financials with clients, potentially looking at documents with them online. Being on Wi-Fi doesn't work for me. So for me, I personally make the choice within my boundaries and time management to block out travel days. That's just a hard boundary for me, and it works, I think. I think as well, it depends on like I was saying about Arnab, it really depends on the systems and the teams you've got in place too. If you've got someone you can hand over to, that's great. But also then if you haven't and you are on your own, you need to make a decision as to, am I going to be more available? How does that look for the clients? In regards from a networking connectivity perspective, it's slightly different. You can dip out of that. But when it comes to client service, you still have to be upholding that service level, however that may look. And I think a key piece around that is setting expectations and the communication. I say it all the time in my posts. I say it to everybody that knows me. Communication is key. Absolutely. Use your words. If you have something to say and you want people to know, or you want them to have this information about you, then tell them. So for me, I will put my out of office on my WhatsApp, even on my LinkedIn as well. So people just don't think I'm being rude and ignoring them. Even if they see me online, I don't necessarily have time to go and answer all of the messages or, reply to the requests, and obviously email as well. And I think if you let, for me, I always let my clients know that I'm traveling, and I say to them, it's not going to impact your case. It's not going to impact the service level you get from me. I'd just rather you know that if you do reach out to me during this time frame, that it's highly likely that I'm not going to be able to respond. If I can, then I will, and that's my choice. But I think letting people know your availability, I think, is key.
Yeah, definitely. I think your boundaries are only ever as good as how well you communicate them, right? You can set the right boundaries in place, but if no one else is aware of that, then they're going to continue to operate in exactly the same way. So yeah, I think that a level of upfront management of that and communication of that is key. And I think if you are working with team members as well, it's almost giving them that extra information up front. You know, what are the things that they're potentially going to need to know whilst I'm offline? So here's my schedule. Here's when you can contact me. Obviously, if there's something going on outside of that, if it's urgent, and that comes back to another point, which is discernment, which is key as well, which I'll come back to in a second. But it's also thinking ahead and thinking, what are the bits that typically they would need to come to me with during the day? Is there any additional information I can give to them, almost in a bit of a handover format, so that they don't need to come to me and they can be self-sufficient? And then you're actually empowering them to do certain things that they wouldn't necessarily do, so long as you're both comfortable with that. But coming back to the other point as well of discernment is crucial, because you have to decide what needs your involvement and what doesn't need your involvement. What are the things that you can hand over? Is there a little bit of extra training that you can give to somebody? What needs to be done in those next few days, in that next week, and what can wait? Or what could simply be delivered in a different way? So I've had clients where I'm due to have a session with them, and if it's had to move over by a few days, then actually we just have a series of WhatsApps and we just have a series of check-ins, and that works really well. So it's about thinking creatively as well. What could you manage differently so you're still serving the purpose? Nobody is actually losing out, but at the same time, going back to your point, all of the expectations that you need to have managed and managed.
Yeah, definitely. Workload management 100% comes into this. I do less when I'm traveling. That's a choice, because some of those things can be pushed down the road. You know, I don't always have to be on those networking online events, for example. If I dipped out of 1 week, it wouldn't be the end of the world. You know, so I take out of my schedule all of the things that are niceties, I would say, versus necessities, which for me is clients are the priority, and anything else attached to that is probably can be pushed out for the sake of traveling for a few weeks. I think it is about prioritizing, but I think really it's for me, before I travel, actually setting out my schedule, my boundaries, how I'm going to communicate that, what workload is going to be incorporated into that, and what's going to come after that and be picked up when I'm back on the ground in Dubai. And I think just having a plan in place, because I've done it before, guilty, absolutely, where I've gone away for the summer and I just felt like I was constantly working. I didn't even feel like a working holiday. I felt like I was constantly available, constantly working, because I hadn't set any boundaries, hadn't given myself the work hours of my day, however that looked, hadn't communicated to anybody with a, you know, WhatsApp notification or out of office on LinkedIn or email. So as far as everybody else was concerned, I was actively available, as I usually would be during UAE working hours, and rightly so, because I hadn't communicated it. So that was on me. Learned that the hard way. And I think I felt more exhausted after I came home.
That's the thing. I think that with everything, right, it's trial and error. And this is exactly why you and I are having some of these conversations now, because we've gone through these experiences and we've played out the I'm always going to be switched on and I'm always going to be available. And you realize that it doesn't work. And actually, what happens is two things. You're going on holiday and you're not necessarily enjoying it. So you start to resent the fact that actually you're being pulled into things that maybe you shouldn't need to be pulled into, but also your delivery of those won't be as good, right? So for me, the conversations that I have with my clients, it's crucial that I have the right level of conversation with those individuals and my mindset is in exactly the right place. So if I try to be switched on the whole time, it's not actually going to serve them. And for me to go away and have a holiday and have a rest, in principle, on surface level, does it sound selfish? Maybe to some people, but actually it serves my business far better in the long run. And it feeds into that creativity as well. We all know that, you know, you're sat by the pool and you're reading something, you suddenly get a great idea and, you know, you write a little note out and you come back and you feel refreshed and you've got a string of ideas as well that you can implement into the business. The other thing that just popped into my mind as well, just whilst I'm thinking about this, is also your energy managing your energy, and also the expectation of others around you. Because if you do need to work on the business, which, let's be honest, most of us actually do, whether that's we're going to spend half an hour in the business, or maybe we're going to spend 3 hours a day in the business, when we're around other people, and especially as expats, they do have a level of expectation that we're going to constantly be there for them. So when we're talking about managing the expectations of others in our business, sometimes it's just as important to manage the expectations of those outside of our business as well. And depending on who you're dealing with, that can actually be harder than that might appear, whether it's your own family, whether it's in-laws, or we've all got different examples that we can think of.
Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up, actually, because two things have come to mind for me. Firstly, I find when I'm really transparent with my clients and I let them know, they're really respectful. They're like, absolutely, go and have a break, because they know it's either being managed by my business partner, or they know if it's urgent, I'll pick it up. But otherwise, they know that momentum's still carrying on. It's still being fully managed. They have that confidence and trust in me, because I haven't kind of shied off. There's nothing worse than you send someone an email or some comms and then you're getting out of office. You're in comms with them every day or all the time, and they never even mentioned that they weren't going to be available.
Yeah.
I find it a little bit, not deceitful, but it's just not transparent. As in, when you're actually letting people know, usually my clients will message, safe travels, have a great trip, enjoy your time with your family, and actually they tend to not reach out if they don't need to, because they're just really respectful of it. But on the flip side of that with the family, definitely had that. I get comments, my dad all the time, he just tries to jest with me, and he's like, one minute he'll say, oh, shouldn't you be working? And then the other minute it's like, right, should we go out, should we do something? And I'm like, no, I told you I'm working for these hours. And it's like they don't always get it, so it's just about educating them as well, that, do you know what, I generally say I'm not available until mid-afternoon to my family on the days that I'm working. So they know they can go out and about, do their bit. And I say to them, I'll either join you later or we can do something later, and then I'm available. And then also I say to them, okay, I'm off every Friday and Monday. So every weekend when I'm traveling back to the UK in the summer, I have a long weekend every weekend. So I know that I can do activities with them, spend time with them, and be completely present. I'm absolutely switched off.
Yeah, and I think there are some people that are easier to manage in those scenarios than others. It sounds like your family can be quite respectful of that. My in-laws are very respectful of that. My own family, however, is more challenging. But
not sure I painted a true picture there.
In an ideal world, so
my dad would be like, "You were slagging me." No, I was just saying.
Yeah, is he tuning in?
I doubt it.
Yeah, but again, these are all things that you discover through trial and error, and I think also as well, it informs how you pitch to people, right? Because when I first used to go back, and I'd be juggling things at all different points of the day, and actually that's far more distracting, and it takes you away from those individuals pretty much constantly throughout, and there's no expectation management there again on their side. So you might be sat having lunch and you're like, oh, sorry, I've got to go and take a call. Every now and then that's fine for something urgent, but actually if you've said, look, I'm going to be sat in this room for 2 hours in the morning, go off around the shops, have your breakfast, do all of your little bits and pieces that you would normally do, and then I'm yours for the rest of the day. Suddenly that message becomes a little bit easier to manage as well.
So I think it would be fair to summarize and say that first and foremost, we have to be accountable ourselves for our schedule, how that working remotely looks wherever you are in the world. Set those boundaries, that time management, put your own schedule in place, put the infrastructure in around that, whether that be, certain times of the day that you'll be working, sometimes you won't, how that looks, Wi-Fi accessibility, handing over to a business partner or a colleague, and also just managing the time zones. So put that infrastructure in place and then communicate it. And then you have the freedom to enjoy what you've put in place. So I think a big piece of it
is what it's all about.
So
I think absolutely, just starting from the outset, isn't it, really? That time management, thinking about your boundaries, what is that going to look like? managing people's expectations from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good wrap up for the summer months.
A good wrap.
Hopefully people have taken some good takeaways, because I know that sometimes it looks different for everybody. So I think being able to share this with people, hopefully they can maybe implement some of it, and it helps them and supports them in being able to not only own the summer months, but also enjoy them with some productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And these 2 sessions, obviously, we planned these out and we wanted to talk about the summer months, but we are rolling into September soon. So we've got a few topics in mind, but we would love to hear from you as our audience. Is there anything that you would like to hear us talk about in particular? We are all ears.
Brilliant. Well, thanks, Carina, for the chats.
Thanks,
Always
Amanda.
enjoy them. Thanks to everybody who's enjoyed the chat with us, or if you're watching the replay. And we'll see you back here in a couple of weeks.
See you in 2 weeks.